Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for the Bullhorn Academy October webinar. As mentioned before, my name is Ryan. Today, we're going to be covering great ways to integrate your new hire. So those topics include how to properly transfer your Bullhorn account. So when you have somebody that's promoted and somebody's going to be taking over their accounts and what have you, what's the process like to add a new user, disable an old user, and transfer those accounts. We're also going to take a look at getting your new users up and running. So what does it look like when they log in for the first time? And what should their first day look like to make sure that they learn how to do everything in Bullhorn that they need to know in order to get started as quick as possible. And then we're also going to show you how new users can determine which accounts need attention if they're unaware of where to start. So the way I want to set a scene for you guys here. And so the company that I work with, we recently promoted Jesse. So Jesse was a sales manager. He had companies and jobs that he was in charge of maintaining, a lot of hiring managers and contacts that he had to maintain relationships with. He's been promoted to a non-customer facing role. And so we hired a new sales manager named Matt. He's going to be taking over for Jesse. So Jesse's no longer going to be using Bullhorn. Matt's a new Bullhorn user, a brand new hire. And we're going to get everything turned over from Jesse to Matt. And then we're going to log in as Matt, and we're going to see what it looks like for him and what do we need to do in order to get him up and running as quickly as possible. So the first thing that we want to do is I want to point out that the beginning part of this webinar is geared towards administrators. So this process of adding a new account and transferring everything over, you need to be an administrator in order to do that. However, once we log in as Matt, everything that we're going to be looking at is available to all users. So regardless of what type of user you are, you're going to have information that applies to you during this webinar. Now, as I mentioned, Jesse got promoted, so Matt's going to be taking over. The process looks like this. We're going to add Matt's new account so that he can get logged in for the first time. As an admin, I'm going to transfer everything over from Jesse's accounts, from Jesse to Matt, and I'm going to disable Jesse's account because he no longer needs to use it. Now, let's go ahead and just jump right into that. So I'm going to pull my Bullhorn up here. And for those of you who haven't created a new user, the way that you're going to do that is your administrator is going to log in. They're going to go to Menu, Tools, and then Users here. Now, I could go right here to the Selected Action button and click the Add User button and create a user completely from scratch. But then I have to remember every single field that I need to fill in and every box I want to check. Really the fastest, easiest way for me to create a new user is to copy an existing user who has all the same access that I want my new hire to have. So in this case, because Jesse is being replaced by Matt, and I want Matt to be able to do everything that Jesse could do, I'm going to look for his account by searching or by filtering my user list down to Jesse's account, and I'm going to copy his account. This is going to give him the same level of access and all the same features so that I know that they had identical setups so that Matt can get up and running as fast as possible. Now, to do this, it's just as easy as this copy user button up here in the top right-hand corner once you've gone into Jesse's actual account. So you need to open his account by clicking this edit pencil here, and then go to the top right and click copy user. You're going to have a pop-up that appears that warns you that you may incur additional user fees. Now, this is one of the things that you want to keep in mind when you're changing over users. If you ever have a question of, am I going to be billed twice, or how does my billing work for that? You want to reach out to billing support as you see on this pop-up to answer any questions. However, in my case, I am enabling my new user and disabling my old user on the same day. As long as you do all of this very quickly and on the same day, you don't have to worry about being double charged in the case of just swapping out users. If you're going to be doing something where there's a long turnover process and you need to have 2 accounts active for more than a day, then you're going to want to keep that in mind if you're concerned about whether or not you're going to have to pay for additional users. So you always want to reach out to billing support when you have questions about what the billing is going to look like for that. I know that we're just swapping them out, so I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to load a copied user for me. So we can still see at the top left here, this was Jesse's account originally. So we're going to be creating the user account for Matt now. When it comes to creating a new user, what you want to do for the username here is you want to keep a good pattern. So we have jesse.training here. And whenever we create a new user, we want to have the same pattern for all of our users from a management standpoint. It makes it a lot easier when I'm helping my new employees, or if I'm setting up, trying to test something or log in as another user or something like that. It's a lot easier if everyone's got the same format. So for my new hire, because we use jesse.training and my login is ryan.training, then my new hire is going to be matt.training. I also want to call attention to you guys, the user type field here. This is what actually controls what kind of access the user has. So Matt is going to be an admin, as you can see in the name of the user type here. If I wanted him to be a standard user, I didn't want to give him admin access to be able to add new users and that kind of thing, I would need to change that. But like I said, I want him to have everything that Jesse had access to. So I'm not going to touch the user tab. I don't need to toggle any of that. I don't need to change anything here. Now, all of these additional fields here, everything is the same. Matt's in the same office. He's in the same department. I don't have to change anything. If I needed to, and if you have questions on what any of these fields mean, you can look at our documentation, and it covers every single one of these fields in detail, and you'll be sent a link that covers this at the end of the webinar. One of the things that I do need to change other than the username, though, is obviously the contact information. So it's populated the address and title and all that good stuff for me, but clearly Matt is not Jesse, so I need to put Matt's name in. And I may need to change his phone number because he's got a different extension. So instead of 3333, it may be 3335 or something like that. But other than that, I can pretty much leave all of this be. The reports to field is important for reporting purposes. So that would be the manager. Matt's going to be reporting to me, so I don't need to change any of that, but you could always toggle that if necessary. But just putting his name in is good enough here. The most important thing you need to check when creating a new user, though, is the email settings field. So it's important for using the Bullhorn for Email gadget, or if you want email tracking to work in your system, you've got to put an email address in for your new user. Now, it's as simple as literally putting the email address into this primary email field. So I've got Matt's new email address in here. It's matt.bhtraining@acmerecruiters.com. I'm also going to double check this inbound email field. Now, because I copied my user, it's turned on, but it's important to always verify that that's turned on in the case that you use our email tracking, because there's no going back and catching emails. If that were disabled and you wanted email to track, there's no way to like fill it in after the fact. Now this turns everything on for email tracking to happen in Bullhorn, but you may need to take additional steps for your individual company, because depending on how your email integration is set up, whether you use Outlook or Gmail, and how your IT team set that integration up, you may or may not have to have something done internally in order to make Matt's or your new user's email track. Now I have a rule set up with my IT team. Whenever they create a new email address for me, regardless of who they are, they add them to the email tracking for Bullhorn. So I don't have to worry about that, but that is something that you may want to consider when you're creating new users, is ensuring that you've got a good coordination with your IT team so that all of that is set up and good to go. There's nothing else really that I need to change in here. Now, as an admin, I can see that because I copied the user over, the email signature has copied over as well. So clearly that's not Jesse, that's Matt training. But you may want to have Matt go in after the fact when he's logged in for the first time and customize his email signature, or you can do that for him if you want. One of the things that we do is we have links here for our social media accounts. So Matt's going to need to go in and put his LinkedIn profile, his Facebook account, and that type of stuff as the link of the email address. But I'm going to leave that for Matt to do because I don't have the information as to what his links are and what have you. So at this point, the minimum amount of stuff has been done to get my new user set up. So I'm going to save that. And if you have any duplicates like we have here, it's going to show you that you've got a duplicate. So you always want to ensure that your new users have a name that is unique. We can't share usernames, and we don't want to repurpose usernames. You don't want to overwrite Jesse or what have you. So because I've got that new user, I'm going to add in a BH here to see if that's available. And then I'll save, and it'll look at the system. It'll compare the username to see if there are any issues, and then it'll flash the system here for me. And now this new user has been created. So at this point, we can talk about the password. So Matt doesn't have any password. We only know what his username is. I don't know what his password is. You don't know what his password is. And that's actually a good thing. What I would recommend as a best practice for your new hires is to not create a new password for them, because if you write down a password or you email it out or what have you, that's not really a very secure way to send out information. The best practice here is to just give your new hire the username and then ask them to reset their password upon logging in. So when they go to log in for the first time, there's going to be a I forgot my password link at the bottom. They can use that to reset their password, and that way you're not emailing passwords back and forth or something along those lines, and potentially risking somebody seeing your data that they shouldn't. That being said, for training purposes, I'm going to be logging in as Matt, so I'm going to reset his password so I'm aware of what it is. And you can also do that if you need to change their password for whatever reason. If they forget or what have you and you want to reset it for them, you can. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a password for Matt, and we'll be able to log in as him at a later time. Now, before I log in as Matt, the thing that I need to do at this point is transfer all of my records over. So I'm ready to transfer records from Jesse to Matt's account now that I've got a new account set up. So one of the items here so the next step that we're going to do here is we're going to transfer those records over. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Jesse's record again. So you always want to start with the person that you're transferring records from. And there's a records transfer button up here in the top right hand corner. When you click on that, you're going to get an option for all of the different types of records, and you can break it down by entity as to what kind of records you want to transfer. So we've got companies, candidates, and jobs here. You don't see contacts in this list because whenever you transfer a company over, it automatically transfers all the related contacts for that company. So in this case, I'm going to transfer all of the companies from Jesse over to Matt here, and I'm going to click the transfer button. It's going to warn me that this action is permanent, and I want that, so that's good. So I've transferred all of the records over. Let me go back here, and I'm going to do the same thing for jobs. I'm going to leave candidates for now because he's a sales manager, and we're not too worried about candidates at this moment, but we can always transfer that later if we need to. So at this point, the records are transferred over, and everything is ready to go for our new hire. Jesse is done. This is the end of the day. I'm doing this maybe on a Friday or a Monday, and Jesse doesn't need to log in anymore. So at this point, we're ready to get rid of Jesse's account. Now, we don't want to, like I said, we don't want to overwrite user accounts, and there's no deleting user accounts or anything. You just go here to the account section and you disable your user. This will allow me a couple of things. One, this ensures that everything that Jesse's done is still labeled as Jesse, so all of his historical actions of adding accounts and working with submissions and all that is still saved in the system. And also, if Jesse ever does need access again, it's as simple as coming back here and re-enabling his disabled account. So he'll then be able to log in if for some reason in the future we ever need to re-enable that for him, or if there's a reason I as an admin need to enable it and log in as him to fix something or find a record or what have you. That being said, because we transferred everything over, there's really no need for that. Jesse is disabled at this point. I won't be charged for him in the future. And we've got everything turned over, so we're ready to start our day as Matt and get him up and running. So at this point, we're going to log in as Matt to see everything that's been turned over and make sure that everything is good to go. So I'm going to log out here. And then we're going to switch gears a bit and go into Matt's account and pretend like it's his first day and everything. So as an admin at this point, I'm done. I've transferred the records over. Again, because we didn't overwrite Jesse's account, all of his historical data is still there. So if you go to a job and you look at an old submission, it's not going to suddenly say that Matt did a submission 3 years ago when he didn't work for us. It's still going to say that Jesse had that over, or had that that action responsible to him. The only things that we haven't transferred over for Matt is if we use something like distribution lists or tear sheets. My company, in the role that Jesse had, we didn't use a lot of distribution lists and tear sheets, but you may still need to copy those over for your new users. So there may be additional steps that you want to take. In this particular example, we're not going to do that, but you can always take a look at the documentation that we have for switching out users, and it covers in detail how to transfer over your tear sheets, distribution lists, and any additional records. But for this, for getting Matt logged in, we're going to just worry about candidates or companies and jobs at this point. So I've logged in as Matt at this point, and we're going to take a look at what the records were transferred and see how everything's good to go. So we want to make sure that the accounts were transferred correctly and that Matt's got everything as expected. So when you log in the first time, as Matt, as a new hire, you're going to get some tips on how to use the program, which is super helpful. When you start with a new hire, there's a couple of different things that you want to do. And let me go ahead and pull that up for you guys. So at this point, your new hire is going to log in the first time. What does your new hire need to do? Your new hire needs to log in and figure out how to answer questions. So obviously you're going to be there, or your admin or your experienced folks are going to be there in order to help your new hires. But they also should be shown where they can get questions answered on their own. We want self-service to kind of be pushed to the front, because I'm going to be able to answer questions and work with Matt closely, but I'm not going to be there every second of the day in order to answer all of his questions. So I want to show him where those resources are at as part of his first day. Additionally, Matt's going to want to get used to setting up Bullhorn. So he's going to want to look at the list views, look at preferences, and understand sort of what even is Bullhorn and how do I get started. And then we want to move him into using Bullhorn, and we want to do this as soon as possible, as soon as your new hire hits the floor, if it were. So if you're going to have an orientation or what have you, obviously you need to do all of that first. But when we start talking about I want my new hire to use Bullhorn, we need to get a lot of we need to make sure that they do the most important actions on their first day, or as close to their first day as possible. So what does that mean? There's some core things in Bullhorn that everyone's going to have to do. A new hire, there's no way a new hire is going to get around having to put in submissions or having to fill out a job or something like that. Everyone's got to use that. But where a lot of the issues that folks run into when they're talking about getting their folks to use Bullhorn effectively is they don't necessarily use the most important features right out the gate. So you want to establish a good process from the very beginning that absolutely all of your emails, all of your notes, and all of your tasks are within Bullhorn. So we want to build good habits from the very beginning. We want our new hires to always put a task in, to always put a note in, or to always have their emails tracked within Bullhorn, because that's where a lot of the benefit from Bullhorn is from a management perspective. And so we want to design our first day for our new hires to ensure that they get to know how to do this, so we don't have a surprise 6 months down the line with a new-ish recruiter that doesn't know how to add a note to the system. So we want to design our day, our first day or our first week, to ensure that they do every single one of these things right out the gate, so that they know how to do it and they've got those good habits built. So switching back to Matt's login here, we're going to walk you through what that should look like. You don't necessarily have to have this exact same path for your new hire, but you should really be thinking about what are all the things I want them to touch? What are all the things I want them to do as part of that to ensure that they've got those good habits built? So the very first thing for Matt that we're going to do is we're going to look at that getting questions answered. So the very first buttons that I want Matt to click on is the Get Help button up here in the right-hand corner. So this is going to cover a lot of those very basic, how do I add a record? How do I even know where any of the buttons are? That type of stuff. So we've got the Bullhorn Academy here is linked to the Get Help button. And this covers a lot of our e-learnings. So you can have your new hires go here to the filter under e-learnings and go to foundations. And this will cover for them the very basic stuff that you may personally not have enough time to show them every single aspect of Bullhorn because it's a comprehensive product. And there's a lot of different things that they may need help with learning how to do. So you can have your new hire go through here and go, okay, I don't know how to add a candidate record. I need someone to show me. Then you can have them go in and watch a video. Now, in real life, not everyone has time to watch videos. These are short and quick and to the point. They're only a few minutes long. But if I'm in an environment where I don't have the time to watch this video, we also have these quick reference guides that are handy for your new hires to give them the basics of, I need to add someone to Bullhorn. How do I do it? Here are the different ways, and just the 1-2 clicks in order to get that going so that they're able to start working that as soon as possible without being lost or confused. Now, this customer portal has a lot of great options in it for getting a new hire up and running for the very basics of how to use Bullhorn, how to understand how the search works, how to add a note, that kind of stuff. And there's also a filter here so that if you're looking for something in particular, you can run a search on it and filter it down to just the videos and quick reference guides that you need. Now, this is great for getting someone started, but they may have more comprehensive questions to that, or more specific questions than is covered in the Get Help section of the Bullhorn Academy. So that's where we want to make sure that our new hires have access to the Resource Center. So the Resource Center is under Menu, Support, and then Bullhorn Resource Center here. When they open up that link, they're going to see the Resource Center. And depending on your new hires, they may not have tickets and what have you, because those are only for your account and support context. So generally speaking, your new hires aren't going to have a tickets tab, but they are going to have the home tab and the articles tab. And the articles tab is where a lot of the power is for them to get started on looking up new articles and getting answers to questions. So if they knew right out the gate that they're going to have to send a mass mail, they can do a search for that and get the article that they need on how to do a mass mailing or how to get their questions answered for a more particular or specific issue that they may have. We also have this great filter on the left-hand side here, which helps them. One of the things with new hires that can be a bit of a struggle is that they don't know what they don't know. So they don't even know where to get started when it comes to working with the email, because they don't know everything about how the email is tracked. They don't understand mass mailing. They don't even know what to ask. So they go here to the left-hand side, they can filter down to email, and then they can browse all of our articles to see, oh, I wasn't even, what is a template? I didn't even know about templates. What is that? Click into it and learn how to use mass mailing templates or task templates or what have you. So this is a really important resource for your new hires to ensure that they're able to find help on their own for some of the most basic issues that they may run into. So one of the things that I know for Matt is that we're going to be sending a mass mailing. So I'm going to hold on to this particular article that explains to me how to send a mass mail, and we're going to talk about it here later. At this point, Matt's got answers on how do I get started, if I have questions, where do I go? Now we're ready to actually get started on doing some work. So the most important thing that we need to figure out is when we looked at that record transfer process that we did earlier, we kind of want to ask ourselves, what does transferring even mean? What does it mean that a record was transferred? What accounts does Matt own? We want to verify that for Matt. And the reason that I'm going to have Matt do that is because it's going to get him introduced to our list views, which is imperative for everyone to get a good grasp on how Bullhorn works. So the first time he logs in, he's going to get some tips on how the lists work. I'm going to skip that for now, but you definitely want to have your new hires click through all of that. And you want to have your new hire look at his company list to make sure that all of the accounts are right. So your new sales manager is going to have certain accounts assigned to him. We need to verify with those with Bullhorn that he's got the right accounts assigned to him. So the first thing that Matt should be doing is going to this user dropdown and clicking My Companies. Now, in a realistic scenario, we want to make sure that Matt understands that what the ownership means. Does he have access to the right stuff? And he probably has some sort of turnover process where, as a manager, I know that I've assigned Matt these particular accounts or something like that. And so we may have talked about, you're going to own this company and that company and this company, but in Bullhorn, we want to verify that he has that ownership. So when I come to the companies tab and I see that Matt doesn't have any results, that can be an issue because I'm confused. And this is a very common thing that we run into with our new hires, where they go to my companies and nothing was back and they don't understand why. And as an admin, I want to think ahead to how a new hire is going to use this and see, are there going to be any issues that they run into on their first day? So by having him go to the users drop down, we understand that the list can be filtered. We go to my companies, he doesn't own anything. And then I've got to ask myself, okay, what is Matt going to do about that? How is my admin going to resolve that issue? And so as I mentioned earlier, we know certain accounts are going to belong to Matt. So I know as a manager, I'm going to assign him Caldwell Consultants, Mystery Inc., and Real Recruitment, because that's stuff that Jesse had previously owned. And so I want to go into the records here and make sure that everything is set up and good to go and owned by Matt, because ownership itself is determined by contact ownership, and understanding that as an admin is imperative in designing everything and making sure that my team has the right stuff and they're all good to go. So if I go to the company list and I don't see the right things filtering down under ownership, it tends to be because there aren't the right contacts associated with the companies and what have you, because if we take a look at the actual columns themselves, there's a couple of different owners and ownership columns here, and these are the ones that can confuse your new hires and can be a little confusing, honestly, with your admins, because they may not understand the difference. So you may want to have someone like your new hire take a look at both of them next to each other just to make sure that they make sense. So, for example, there's the owners field and the ownership field. We get a lot of questions over what's the difference between the two of these. And so I want to make sure that you guys understand that the ownership field refers to ownership as in, is it a public company or a private company? So are they on the stock exchange or are they not? So most of the time when we're talking about owning an account, that's not what we're referring to. So we can go ahead and get rid of the ownership field and not worry about that. So we want to make sure that when we're talking to our new hires about, do you own this company? Is it the right company, and all of that? We don't want them looking at, oh, all of these are blank, or this just says public. I don't understand what any of that means. So at this point, we now want to make sure that we get the contacts that are all transferred over to ensure that everything's up to date for Caldwell, Mystery, and Real Recruitment. Now, when I go to Caldwell Consultants, for example, and I look at the contacts tab, I see multiple people owning the contacts. That's why it doesn't appear to Matt that he actually owns this company. So I'm going to transfer the ownership of these contacts over right now. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, why didn't the company just transfer over automatically to Matt? That's because we transferred stuff from Jesse to Matt. So Matt got the stuff from Jesse, which were the two contacts that you see towards the bottom here, Chris and Corey, but Lucas belongs to Ryan, which is me. And so we didn't do a records transfer between Ryan and Jesse. That's something we're going to want to check for in any time that we're sending out or setting up new accounts or transferring things over. There may be some contact ownership issues that we need to clean up. So we're going to transfer this one contact from Ryan, and we're going to transfer it over to Matt. Now, I'm logged in as Matt, and I'm able to do this. You yourselves may not give the rights for folks to transfer contacts back and forth. If you don't allow your standard users or your sales managers or what have you to do that, you may need to have an admin do this on their behalf. So it's good practice for Matt to log in and check his company list to make sure that he owns everything, but you may need to assist him with that if he doesn't have the ability to just transfer ownership like that and then be able to filter his records down from there. So once we start going through this list and filtering down and checking to make sure that the ownership is correct, we might have to go in through a couple of these and fix someone like Sally. So Sally's in there for Mystery Inc. as well. But since I've already shown you guys how to fix that, you understand that. I'm not going to worry about transferring Sally over for right now. But now I've got the right accounts when I go to users and my companies. So I know Matt has the right stuff. So Matt at this point goes, okay, I've got these 3 accounts assigned to me, or 50 or however many accounts it may be. He's got all of them assigned, and now he can start asking himself, now what's going on with these accounts? Is Caldwell happy? Is Mystery happy? What are our open jobs? How do I find all this out? You always want to start with making sure that the accounts are right, and then move into looking at jobs and statuses and that kind of thing. So we can use the slide out here and take a look at a couple of these dashboard cards in order to see what the progress is. Now, these dashboard cards that we're going to be looking at are part of our Enterprise Edition, and they are part of Pulse. So we may not, if you have Corporate Edition or Team Edition, you may not have access to these cards directly, but you do have access to the email history. So you might not get a simple summary of who's the most responsive if you have Team or Corporate Edition, but you can still look into the email tab on the company record and still get the same information. You just have to dig a little bit. So as a new hire, I'm going to look at the email tracking. I'm going to see some of the most recent conversations between contacts at this company and my company. I also may want to take a look at this most responsive contacts. So again, this is part of our Pulse. So you got to have Enterprise Edition to have this card. But this is going to be real helpful to tell me at Caldwell, who's the person I should be talking to? Who's the person that's emailing back and forth the most? What's a good time to reach out to them? So on average, when we have a bunch of emails back and forth, he tends to respond at Tuesday at 3 p.m. So maybe I want to, as I'm planning out my day, I may want to go, okay, I'm gonna call Charles, or I'm gonna email Charles, and I'm gonna contact him around that time because I know I'm most likely to get a hold of him. So that way your new hire isn't just calling and leaving voicemails, at least minimizing the chance of that. But now that I've taken a look at each one of these and I've gone, okay, I can see what kind of emails have been going on. I can see who's the most responsive. Now I need to start planning out my day in that, who am I going to talk to? Who am I going to reach out to? And what am I going to talk to them about? So the thing that I'm going to be talking to these contacts about are most likely are going to be open jobs or something like that. So I want to see if there's anything going on with my jobs that I should be aware of. Are there jobs falling off the radar? Is there something that they're upset about? I need to jump right into that. So as a new hire, I'm going to jump into my dashboards. And again, this is one of those features that's for our Enterprise Edition, but you do have a way to search for this information if you're a team or corporate. I'm going to show you that here in a second. So if we go to my dashboards and we go to the jobs by age card, this is a really helpful card for making sure that we don't have any jobs that are outstanding, that are super old, that are still open, that maybe we need to take action on. So I add the jobs by age card. I'm going to expand this so you guys can see this a little bit better. And I see that there's 2,000 jobs. That can't at all be correct. Also, I'm looking at it and it says Manic Mowing Agency is one of the companies that I'm hiring jobs for. And as Matt, or as his admin, I know Matt doesn't own that company. That's not an account that he needs to worry about. So one of the things that he may need to do the first time that he logs in is configure the card just to his jobs. So we're going to go to this configure card button. And we're going to open that up and we're going to call it My Jobs. And to make things even simpler, I can rename this Matt's Jobs by Age, and I can go ahead and apply it. And that's going to refresh this list and show me, okay, what are the ages for my jobs? So now I know I've got 2 jobs that are between 6 to 10 days old. And depending on my company and depending on what kind of work I'm doing, that may or may not be acceptable. So, but I'm able to see that and click on 6 to 10 and see, all right, these are the jobs that I've got open. Now, I may want to take a look at these jobs and get familiar with them. What's the status? How many submissions do we have? What's going on with these jobs? And I can just open up the list view here if I wanted to get additional information in an easy way to view it. And this is the part where your corporate and your team editions come in. You may not have that card to quickly build that link for you, but all that card does is it builds a search based off of date added and excludes anybody that's archived. So these are jobs in any status that are not archived that have been added between those particular days. dates, and they've been sitting around. So we may want to add additional fields to this to filter it down. Or if I have team or corporate edition, I may just run a search like this for Matt to begin with, and then save that as a favorited search, and then I can share that out with Matt, or I can just tell Matt to go in and use the favorites. So even if you don't have the enterprise edition, you could still use this as a good practice to teach them, here's how search works, here's how our favorited search works, so that you can quickly find the jobs that are important to you, and then you can go through these jobs and check on the statuses and see what's going on with them, so you can prep yourself for those phone calls to those hiring managers. So I've got a job here for the training manager. I know when I call Tracy, she's probably going to ask me about this because we haven't taken any action on this whatsoever. And now I'm prepared to have that conversation because I know what's going on with that particular job. So now I need to prepare myself for these phone calls. And this is where we start talking about tasks, and we start talking about notes and that type of thing, these really important behaviors that new hires need to establish right out the gate, because if they learn to do this at the very beginning, they're going to continue that habit. It's much easier to build a habit early than it is to deal with bad habits and trying to fix those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my new hire open up the contact list, and we're going to do that same filter, right? We're going to go to users, we're going to go to my contacts, and we're going to filter those down. Now, for this exercise, I'm going to select everyone, but because we were smart and we had Matt take a look at the jobs and everything, we know that maybe for a particular company, we know that Charles is the one we respond to, so we can unselect Corey. We don't want to talk to Corey. We want to talk to Charles. I know Tracy's the only one that I want to talk to at Mystery Inc., so I'm going to leave her on there. So how do I start my day? How do I start a call list or something like that, so that I can establish these are the folks that I'm going to call. I can let my manager know this is the work that I'm doing. This is why we want to establish that habit of telling our new hires to create task lists. So if we use this list and we create a task list from it, we can do something like first contact and set something like the end of the day today. So by 5 p.m., Matt's going to reach out to these folks and give them a phone call to introduce himself as the new account manager. He's also going to follow up with an email because he wants to send them their contact information and just give them that sort of level of customer service that they really desire. But right out the gate, I'm going to build this task list, and I did that very quickly, just instantly. Now I've got 4 tasks added, and I know that I need to call these folks. While I'm still on this list, because I happen to take a look and know that I'm going to be mass mailing folks because I'm going to be emailing them my contact information after this, I know the first thing I need to do is create a distribution list, and Matt has step-by-step directions on how to do that, so he knows, okay, let me go ahead and go in here and click add to distribution list and create a distribution list for my new contacts. Now, the reason I'm creating a distribution list and not just emailing them straight from the contact list is a couple of reasons. One, I want to call them first because I feel like calling them is more personal. And then 2, I want to make sure that I keep track of who did I contact my first day, because I can think of this as an email campaign. This is really marketing in some way, if you think about it, because we're establishing those relationships. We're making sure that they have a good feeling for our brand, which I'm the account manager, so I'm a representative of the company. I want them to feel good about it. So I'm going to do something like a first touch email distribution list, so that if I go 6 months down the line and I want to know, wait a minute, did I talk to Tracy right when I took over all of the accounts? I can look back at my distribution list and see, oh, I reached out to Tracy. So I know that I talked to her 6 months ago, and that relationship is good to go. So we've created a task list, we've created a distribution list. Now Matt can start his day. This is one of the things that is the most important for your new hires, is to get them to start using tasks, to start using notes, and that type of thing, so that you can see what they're doing without issue. So Matt can go in here now and he can do the slide out, and he can see all of his references because he built it in a good manner from the contact list, so it automatically connected everyone. He has the ability to add a note, so as he's making these phone calls, we're establishing those good habits of taking notes about his first call and talking to Joe about whatever job it may be, and establishing that he's got those good habits of, okay, I did a marketing call or a recruiting call to identify that I talked to him, and we've got a good habit built. So he's used that task list to check off that first day, and as he's making those phone calls, so as a new user or as a manager, you can look at his task list and go, okay, Matt's getting stuff done. He's knocking stuff out. I see notes have been touched. I see tasks have been touched. So we know that we're getting really good insight into the data that in the long run is a really good habit to build. And then from there, he can go into his distribution list and he can do a mass mailing and contact everyone after he's made his phone calls so that they don't get this out of the blue, and start building those really good relationships. So all in all today, we've looked at ways to transfer the accounts. So when we talk about transferring records, we're talking about transferring, job records so that person's the owner, but we don't want to impact history so that we ensure that, Jesse and our old hires got all the credit correctly. So we looked at the proper way to transfer those accounts. We got our new hire up and running. We showed him the tools that he needed in order to get started. And we established a good routine for our new hires that touched on everything that we wanted them to touch on. And then we also took a look at how your new hire can figure out what's going on with each one of his new accounts, so that your new hire has a good plan for starting up and figuring out what to do with his or her accounts as he sees fit. And that in all is a great way to get your new hires up and running. So at this point, I wanted to open the floor to questions to see if there was anything we hadn't touched on yet.
Thanks, Ryan. We're going to quickly move into the Q&A section of the webinar. I know we only have about 4 minutes left, so we'll get to as many as we can. Question 1. I recently tried to transfer around 25,000 candidate records from one of my users by using the records transfer button, but it timed out. How can I successfully transfer that many candidates?
Okay, so that's a great question. So what this question's referring to is when we're on that user list and we're using that mass record transfer button that's up on the right-hand corner here, if you are transferring records between a very robust user, the question, so for those of you who couldn't hear it, the question was, I tried to use the records transfer button and there were 25,000 records and it timed out. What can I do? So because this is an en masse process, if you're talking hundreds of thousands of records, it can sometimes time out on you. So what you want to do is you want to break that up into chunks of a few thousand. And you can't do that with the record transfer button because it just says they have 25,000 candidates. So you would just find your corresponding list and use the change owner button from there. So you could break it up into groups of 500 or 1,000 to transfer your records over. This is also a great way to transfer records over if you don't want to do everything all at once. So if somebody's got 25,000 candidates, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're 25,000 good candidates. So you may want to break it up into chunks and just transfer the contacts or the jobs over that are the pertinent ones to transfer over, and then have everything else belong to your disabled users so you can reference it at a later time or something like that.
Okay, next question. How do new users get their password? Am I supposed to set it for them and email it to them?
So that was something that we had touched on earlier. I just wanted to reiterate it. So the question was, how do we handle new passwords? Again, you want to make sure that you aren't, it's a best practice. You potentially could just type in a new password, write it on a Post-it note and give it to your new hire, but that's not a really secure way to handle your database. Potentially anyone in the company could snatch up that Post-it note and log in as Matt and start doing whatever they wanted in your account. You don't want that. Same thing with email. Somebody could intercept that email, somebody could leave their phone out, and then potentially you're risking your data. So what you should be doing as a good practice is giving your new hires just their username and then having them go to this forgot password link, putting in their username, and because you put in their email address when you were setting them up, they'll get a link to their email that'll allow them to reset their password, and that's a very secure way to share passwords when you're setting up new users, or even if you're having old users who are having issues with their passwords.
Okay, I'd say that's about all we have time for today. So we're going to go ahead and end the webinar, but there were some really great questions that would be better handled offline. So we'll be sure to be in touch shortly after we wrap up today. Thank you, everyone.